Hi, everybody. Welcome to the teacher feature. And I'm so happy to have JoAnn Sanchez, who um, is going to talk about her class that she's going to offer at the International Herb Symposium and a little bit about herself. And where are you calling in from? You're
I'm in Arizona.
in Arizona?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I'm in the mountains right now. I live in the desert though,
Oh, awesome.
but it's
And
hot there.
yeah.
So I'm not there.
Yeah. So yeah, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and then, talk a little bit about the class that you're going to teach at the International.
Okay, thank you. Um, I ran a school for nearly 30 years, an herbalism school, or owned a herbalism school for quite a long time. And part of the curriculum included what I called a herstory. And even I'm reading this book now in preparation for September when we all gather at the conference. It's called America's Botanical Medical Movement, and I read it years ago. And, but just yesterday, I was trying to look through all the female inquiries, and there's almost none in this book. And I thought,
Hmm.
Mr. Flannery and what's the other gentleman's name? Berman, so I wrote this history as best I could from, the beginning when we found yarrow in the graves of what is now Iran, all the way to, well, I kind of stopped in the 2010s in terms of creating the curriculum. But anyway, my interest certainly focused when I taught these sections of the curriculum on the heritage that we sit on now, which is a couple of hundred years ago from now, in terms of where does our history lie, in terms of how can this be informative to where we've begun. And this morning I was thinking a lot about how similar the times of 200 years ago. Um, I thought I might just talk a moment about a gentleman named Samuel Thomson, and even before him, the widow Benton, because when the widow Benton, which is all we can find as reference for her name, was really his teacher. And she doesn't get any credit. I hired one year, a long time ago, the librarians at the Lloyd Library to dig up information about her, and they couldn't find it. So, of course, the credit has been given to Samuel Thomson. But part of my herstory offering, his story and her story, equally true to make the full story of where have we come from. Uh, I really, the eclectics are significant in our way of learning about how do we utilize our connection with nature and have a pharmaceutical presentation of the botanicals and like that, and keeping relationship with. And I think that our roots begin with this man, Samuel Thomson. So in my efforts to write those herstory lineages, this is, I'll probably bring a handout or something to the conference. You'll see it took me, easy to come up with John King and John Scudder and Harry Wixfelter and Alva Curtis, which these are the names of some of the prominent eclectics that lent themselves to the way we carry on the sometimes still seen as alternative, but the traditional ways of using medicines. And certainly at that time, as is this time, there's this almost two fractions in America, because we split of using more toxic kinds of things and big guns, if you will, heroic medicines, as well as the intention to keep alive, which is what all of us who will be at the conference keep alive, the more longstanding way of attending to healing and having the connection with nature as the source of that healing for us. So it took me years to be able to find and put in the female parts of that lineage. And I have done that to some degree, and perhaps some of those practitioners will come to light in this presentation that I'll give to help with the full story. We just had Father's Day, so I'm reminded of, how important the masculine input is as well. And so Samuel Thomson, this itinerant farmer, meaning that he farmed in New Hampshire, but he moved around, and he had his influence in a much wider range than just his New Hampshire place. And so, but he was a man who, I think the symbolism of this energy is the antimony and the calomel, these very powerful, antimony is a metal that comes from the earth that has been, nowadays it's still used and harvested from the earth, and it's used to for a flame retardant and to charge batteries. So we're thinking that that is one of the main medicines that was used by the regulars, if you will. So to think as now that there was harsh medicines, and there was a huge outgrowth that came for this eclectic period from 1820 to 1940-ish, around there. So that's why I'm saying 200 years ago is the time we're looking back to. And here comes this little folk doctor, they called him the root doctor. And he had some beliefs and opinions, certainly some from antiquity, but the idea of, a body shouldn't be cold, for instance. And we see modern day practitioners like Dr. Christopher and Dr. Bastyr, for instance, following that idea that the host should be well. And anyway, so Samuel Thomson thought that, the vitality, and so there comes the word that we use for the physiomedicalists and how they became relevant at the same time that the eclectics were here. So Samuel Thomson, being the folk man that he was very much opposed to formal education. He believed that everyone should have access to the information that he knew. But we often reflect back on him as being a little bit heroic himself, but within the context of the time. He used purges, and he didn't believe in bloodletting by any means. But the excessive purgation of getting the bad, if you will, the sickness out of the body, that was not his belief system either. But some of his herbs, and the most famous of which is, of course, lobelia, certainly was, could be seen as, some to treat illness with emetics is not exactly how we perform this at this time with our herbalism. So I see that my presentation, when I come to the conference, will share with us that we had this profound lay movement. And in a lot of ways, we are like that, this contemporary herbalism that we have throughout our whole country and the world. I just came back from Italy, and everywhere people use their plants, and always they have. And I think that there is some context for all the information we get, but also that we can understand the roots of the philosophy, as well as the specifics of some of the medicines and how they were used, and what does that lend to itself today. Some of the things that, and I could go on, and I'm only supposed to be doing 5 minutes, so I'm trying to think of something that I could just close this up and then know that I will be doing a summary of about 100-year period that Samuel Thomson preceded, and lent itself to this idea of the plants themselves can be our allies, and it is important that the vital forces remembered, the human element and the plant element that work together. And what was that Samuel Thomson has so much notoriety, that he preceded this important eclectic time where we still find the influence in our practices today.
Yeah. Yeah, he set the stage, right?
Yeah,
Thompsonian.
yeah.
Yeah,
He
what
did
is that?
for Thomsonianism. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have contemporary Thomsonians and
Mhm.
folks that still say, in their lineage, this is what they're following as
Yeah.
herbalists in particular.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
anyway,
well, I've been, doing a little research myself as well, and the eclectics were schools of medicine were, known for letting women into the school.
yes,
And
that's right.
the
Yeah.
Eclectic Medical Institute in Cincinnati, I think,
Mhm.
graduated something around 140 women.
Yay. Oh, I didn't realize that. Yeah. Because I was
Yeah.
looking at the different years and, there was this 8-year period that they graduated 850. And I was measuring that against, because I worked at the university, the naturopathic college for 30
Yeah.
years. And I knew how many we were putting out, and I'm thinking, wow, they were
Hmm.
very, very successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But right,
Yeah.
to say that women are included, all of us are included. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
Mhm.
think that really set the stage. And certainly, right, uh, I really love the book. I think it's called The Sister Blackwells, but it's
Oh,
about Elizabeth Blackwell and her
hmm,
sister, who were some of the first um,
yeah.
practicing um,
And
doctor.
but they struggled hard. They got their
Oh yeah.
degrees, but it was hard for them to
Well,
get
yeah, they couldn't get
the
the
work.
experience, right? So they
Right?
went, yeah, Elizabeth went to Europe and
Yeah,
practiced in some of the hospitals there, and
yeah,
then came back to open the Women's Medical Hospital
yeah,
in New York.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
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 some real struggles.
hmm,
Um, but
yeah,
I think because she was such a strong woman and her sister too, like,
hmm.
that they created really that legacy because I think women were perceived as weak or, not couldn't stomach what it meant to be a doctor and
Right. Yeah, those
um
things. Yeah,
yeah.
couldn't have the scientific inquiry to sustain or
But
contribute. Yeah.
the irony that they were the ones like, doing all the healing anyway, so
Anyways, right. Birthing the babies and all of
yeah,
that.
all
Yeah.
of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So, yeah.
it's well, that's great. I love that you're doing this sort of historical timeline and kind
Mhm.
of deep dive and
Yeah.
um
I love the deep dive.
yeah, because often like you were saying um the stories of these women are not really well known or there's not, information. I mean, I think, obviously because Harriet Tubman was such like a huge figure, right? Like
Mhm.
we know stories of her life and her connection to plants, but um for the most part, like you said, it's very male dominated.
And that couldn't have been the whole truth. It just can't be the whole truth,
No.
So it's a weaving. It's not, yeah.
Yeah.
So I like for us to keep that in mind. It just has to be,
Mhm.
women played a part in all of the story, as well as all of the things that came from the whole story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I had saved about 2 filing cabinets full of literature about this topic. And I kept looking because I'm kind of downsizing because I've retired from the university and I sold my school this year. And I thought, when am I ever going to get to really dig into all this
So now's your
literature?
time. Now's your
Because
time.
my curriculum only allowed 9 hours, to teach
Yeah.
it. And I thought, oh, I would love to do this. And then I got your email and said what you do. And I thought, and it's their theme. And I thought, oh boy. And I didn't, I thought I'm going to take a few months off. So I asked you when the conference was, and I thought, perfect. You know? Yes, yes, yes. Because I had said no to a couple of things, in terms of just give me a while. I'd like to have some private, space out with the plants,
Yeah,
and so,
right.
yeah, so it was like, oh, how wonderful. So thank you, Susan, for me to get to do this deep dive. And I hope that I can share some worthwhile little, gems, if you will, for the attendees so that they can help to get their full picture uh,
Yeah.
and appreciations and understandings of why we practice the way we practice or how we use the certain plants in certain
Yeah.
ways.
Well,
Yeah.
one person that I'm trying to dig into a little bit is Augustus Knapp, who
Oh,
is the illustrator for John Uri Lloyd's Edidofa. And
oh,
then he illustrated um the tarot cards, right?
uh-huh.
But
Wow.
his wife was a graduate of the Eclectic Medical Institute.
Oh, wow.
So who was she in this
Yeah, good for you.
dynamic
That's
story? And obviously we know about Augustus because of his artwork.
uh-huh.
But yeah, so they moved from Cincinnati to California, and he would go on to illustrate the secret teachings of all ages. And they would live in,
Wow.
LA, but what little tidbit I've
Yeah,
been able to extrapolate
yeah,
um is that his wife graduated from EMI, the Eclectical Medical Institute. So
yeah.
who is
Wow.
she in this like dynamic story?
Yeah. Yeah. And I learned about a new doctor that I didn't know about, Dr. Rebecca Keck. And she was an eclectic physician as well, following the Thomsonian tradition. And I thought, okay, I'm going to see what her role was.
Yeah, yeah,
And
unearth this history. Yeah,
yeah, to make it complete.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
Uh, I'm super excited about your class,
Well, thank you.
and it's going to be great to have you there in Cincinnati.
Yeah, so a new location. The
Yeah,
the IHS, this is 37? No, whatever is it, 17?
it's at 17th,
Yeah,
right?
so
So,
34. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, gosh, I remember some of the early ones that I went to. I have this, the setting that we were on at college,
Yeah.
that big dimple. I
Yeah.
remember one year standing in a circle, and this tall man was standing next to me, and he lifted up the legs of his pants, and one of his socks was these bright stripes, and the other one was these giant polka dots. And he said, "Pretty cool, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, pretty cool." He said, "You want to sing together?" And so we knew that, everyone was coming for the closing, and we all held hands. It was Dr. Patch Adams.
I was gonna say, I had a feeling. I had a feeling.
And yeah,